Nintendo shows off the GameCube controller. Gaming is going to the movies. And is Bethesda in trouble? These stories and many more on this episode of the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine.
I've been waiting a long time for a chance to say this. Stop the presses.
Requiescat in pace.
Makes him crazy, man. What is a man?
It's me, Mario.
What a mess.
Get over here!
Please save me.
Welcome back to the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine. As always, I'm your host, Carl, and I'm here with my co-host, back from his assignment or whatever it was, Peter. Say hi, Peter.
Hi.
You haven't heard the last episode yet, have you?
No. I have not heard the last episode yet, but I think someone who replaced me was a little bit more competent than I am. So I think our listeners gained a lot of education from that, but also missed out on a lot of puns. So
this is probably true. No, we last episode, John from the Retro Game Squad was kind enough to jump in last minute to help out since you were busy at work.
I am so sorry. I'm so sorry that this stuff I'm actually being paid for sometimes is more important than whatever this is we are doing here.
I tell you, these people who don't have their priorities straight, it's absolutely terrible. You have to do what you have to do for work, I understand.
Exactly.
But it was a really good episode, and I've known John for a long time, and I think we might end up doing a little side project with him. But we're talking about it right now. We'll see if it comes to anything. But
as long as he's your side guy, then I'm fine with that. But
are you getting jealous? Are you getting jealous?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. And I think if I miss out one or two more sessions, our listeners might actually enjoy me being replaced by someone who knows what he's talking about. So,
dude, you're giving us that fresh perspective, that real fresh perspective.
Exactly. The fresh, obviously totally unprepared perspective. Yeah. I'm the spontaneous guy.
No. You're doing a great job. We don't want to lose you. You are the guy. Don't worry about it. You will not be replaced.
This is on tape, and you promise you won't cut it out?
Yes, definitely won't cut it out. No, that's not going to end up on the cutting room floor. Okay. So that's the banter section of the show. Thank you very much. As always, we're going to be traveling back in time this month to February of 2001 and checking to see what was making headlines in the video game industry at the time. And remember, just a little disclaimer, we use the cover dates of publications to basically do the February 2001 thing. So obviously the news itself happened at some point before February of 2001. Disclaimer over. We're going to go then to our new regular segment before we turn on the time machine, where Peter gets to play a brand new game that was reviewed in a February 2001 publication that he has never played before. And this is a little segment we like to call Peter's 7 Minutes in Heaven.
Oh, hell. We'll see.
Well, this month it's a very special game. You're going to be playing the classic Monolith game, No One Lives Forever. And and now this game isn't like, for example, the arcade games or fast action games of the 80s and 90s. It's already, a more modern 2000s game. So there's, the long cutscene at the beginning, then there's the training missions and so on and so forth. They take you not completely by the hand and with kid gloves like modern games do, but still, it's not the pick up and be right in the action game. So in this case, I've chosen one of the slightly later, not totally end game scenarios in the game for you to jump in on and enjoy, get a feel for the mechanics of the title. The only background information you need to know is you are a female secret agent in the 1960s.
Things I always wanted to be.
I know you did. Or I guess. That's just, yeah, okay. So, Peter, here begins your 7 minutes in heaven. Well, Peter, welcome back. So, tell us about No One Lives Forever.
Well, I certainly did not live forever. Did I tell you that I suck at first-person shooters?
No, you didn't, but
well, no,
I got to see it firsthand, so yes.
Yes, well, but the thing I noticed first is pretty bright, it's colorful, it got all those early 2000s vibe, all those clunky shapes, all those poorly made well, not poorly, but those weird animations. You have those flat faces, and well, you basically just have some kinds of rectangles, you know. Forms.
Well, yeah. Relatively low poly models. For the time, absolutely amazing, but obviously 20 years later, they leave something to be desired.
Exactly. So the mission I've played was I was on a plane and I had to figure out who was boarded on the plane. I was trying to figure out who boarded the plane, and I shot my way through a couple of thugs who all looked the same, and I was killed multiple times by guys shooting through walls. You might call those walls curtains, but I surely couldn't shoot through those curtains, so it was pretty unfair.
Could. You just weren't hitting anything.
No, I could not. So it took me quite a while to figure out that someone is shooting through curtains, because I really took them for walls, because I'm used to curtains actually being able to move when someone shoots through them, but this is just me being a modern day gamer. What I like is it surely has a kind of humor, because at the end of my of this section I've played, I jumped out of a plane. I
didn't jump out.
Huh?
You were sucked out.
Dude, I want to show people I'm in control. Well, certainly I was not, so I got sucked out of a plane, didn't find a parachute, fell. I think the game gave me another chance and dropped, because it was just pitiful, and dropped the guy with the parachute. I could just grab this guy, but I decided to shoot him and fall down right next to him. So this was way more appropriate to the run I had earlier. And I fell into a barn with 130 miles an hour, which is, I think, this is something, you know. This is something.
It's
and for
an
a split second, it's an achievement. And for a split second, I actually thought I survived that thing, but no, I died. So this is pretty cool. And the next thing I noticed is I was 11 by the time when this game was published, and I can't see why my parents wouldn't let me play those games. I mean, first, it is a first-person shooter, and my parents are not so into shooters. And second, jeez, I mean, is there any need for her to have such enormous boobs almost showing out of her, however you want to call that suit?
Her jumpsuit?
Jumpsuit, thank you.
Yeah, it looked really good on the package.
Yeah, I think so.
If you think about it, it's set in the 60s. It's basically a parody of James Bond.
Yeah.
Look at those movies. It was very period accurate.
Yes. Okay, this is true. So, and the accuracy didn't stop by the animation of the planes, The entire game was moving pretty fluidly, but the planes, they were it was like a stop motion kind of cutscene where the planes flew right away from each other. So
yeah, that's weird. I never could figure out what the problem was there, but I'm guessing it probably has to do with the fact that the game engine is meant for first person. Yeah. And so they just didn't really have a flight model built in. So they're kind of forcing the engine to do something that wasn't built into it.
Most likely. Yeah, because as I said, the rest of the game was pretty fluid. I mean, obviously my PC as well is well equipped to handle that game.
So did you at least have some fun with it when you weren't getting blown away again and again and again?
At the very same place. Yes, I have to say it was pretty enjoyable, those 7 minutes, which could have easily been 30 seconds if I wasn't killed every other second. So... But no, it was pretty enjoyable. Would I play it again in my leisure time? No, I think I would not, because it's just a first-person shooter, which I'm not into. But on the other hand, I kind of like the humor. I mean, the bad guy was an evil Scotsman. Come on.
Oh, he's only one of them. Wait until you get to the fat Valkyrie opera singer.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, it gets worse.
The last one, because... No, it ain't over until the fat lady sings.
No, she's not the last one. But I'll tell you, there's only been 4 first-person games that have ever really interested me, that have kept my attention, because I hate I'm like you, the first-person perspective I really have no love of. It doesn't attract me. I prefer the third person, because then I have, I feel more immersed, because when you're a real human being, you have peripheral vision. There's only 4 games that have ever really captured me. One was Terminator Future Shock. Excellent setting and story and the way they structured it. Duke Nukem 3D, and that was mainly the humor. Sogo Mobile Armor Division, which was the first game by the first-person game by Monolith, and that was sort of this thing where they're trying to essentially do an anime story where you spend half the time piloting a giant mech and half of the time as a soldier in the future. And then this game, No One Lives Forever, which was the spiritual sequel to Shogo. It was the next game they made with the same game engine. And the humor in this game, there's so many funny little moments. Like at the beginning of your segment, you have this conversation, multiple choice conversation with this professor guy. And depending on which things you choose, different series of events take place.
Oh, seriously?
And there's also a bunch of stuff you can find, like letters laying around and stuff. And sometimes those will be quite funny. And there's this running gag where every time you meet another spy that you have to use these code phrases to identify yourself, and they just get more and more ridiculous and hilarious as they go along. The whole game is such a beautiful story-driven package that even if you don't like first-person shooters, you have to play this game.
Okay. So, well, I might give it a go and start actually at the beginning and not somewhere at the end of the game where it's really demanding, and I think I got through it pretty well. Was
Remember,
the
there's
second
also
mission.
an easy option. You played on normal. There's an easy option too.
I played on normal, but actually super, super hard, and just for the absolute professionals among us. So yeah.
Yeah. Played on normal.
But honestly, Carl, was it the second or the third mission?
I believe it's the fourth mission.
The fourth one. Well, not that bad actually.
Well, okay, it's actually the third because the first one is the training mission. So
Cool.
yeah.
Okay, I had to take that away from me. Okay.
No, and now you did okay for somebody I just popped into the middle of the game, but next time try to use the crouch position. It's very helpful, especially when you can hide behind the all the chairs and playing. You know?
Man, that's not my game style. I just go in full Rambo.
Well, this game actually has some amazing stealth missions where you're actually moving through an office building and there's cameras moving back and forth. You actually have to avoid the glance of the cameras and stuff. It's really cool.
Oh Lord.
No, it was something that I had never really seen implemented in a first-person game before like that. I mean, obviously Metal Gear Solid had come out before this, but that had that overhead view, so it didn't feel as realistic. But here it's really just, scooting underneath the cameras and stuff to avoid it. It was a totally new experience, really, really immersive, and it worked well with the setting. So no one lives forever, a game I can recommend. And the fun part is you can download it essentially for free because nobody knows who owns the rights. Yeah. So it was partially published by Sierra, partially by Fox Interactive, both companies that don't exist anymore. Monolith didn't control the rights after that. And so there's actually a website where you can download it, and they have patched it up. It works perfect under Windows 10. And you can enjoy it, its sequel, and the spin-off game. So why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
Cool.
No,
Okay.
I might give it another go. I mean, although I don't like first-person shooters, I got pretty much into the BioShock series. Well, BioShock 1, BioShock 2 I just skipped and went back to BioShock Infinite. But I really enjoyed those, so I might enjoy this one as well.
Give this one a try. If the humor appealed to you, and it's goofy, but at the same time it still functions inside of its own weird logic world. You'll get a kick out of it. There's hours of enjoyment to be had.
Speaking of goofy, the menu somehow remembered me of Quack Attack.
It reminded you. Not
reminded you. Not you, me. It reminded me. Sorry, it's late.
No
It reminded me of Quack Attack, the Donald Duck game.
I'm trying. No, I'm thinking of Quack Shot, not Quack Attack. I honestly can't remember what the menu for Quack Attack looked like, but it's a pretty standard menu, but it's got just the moving geometric shapes in the background.
Yeah. Well, this is basically it.
Yeah, a very stylistic, and the color palette, of course, like you said, is very accurate to the swinging 60s. We've done our 7 minutes in heaven, and now before we turn on the time machine, we have one last stop, and that's to check in with our good friend Ethan to find out what I screwed up in our January 2001 jump. So let's check in with Ethan in the Department of Corrections. Welcome back, Ethan. So what did I get wrong back in our January 2001 jump?
Well, we're in the first year of the second millennium, if you're wrong. And before we get into things, of course, there is the Peter comment.
Still need a sound effect for that.
Yep. And he noted your narrator voice. So why don't you give us the demonstration, Mr. Carl?
In a world covered with nothing but unplayed Steam codes, one man would try to play them all. Can he really play 20,000 unplayed versions of Stardew Valley that were all acquired through some weird auction site? Find out in Mission Impossible, The Carl Tales. Doom, doom, doom.
Beautiful.
You're welcome.
Based on a true story.
Yeah. How do you think I spent my summer vacation?
Well, you get vacations? Oh, lucky.
Oh, dude, this is the joy of being an educator. I mean, my students wrote their final exams last week. New students don't show up for 6 weeks.
European school system. All right. On to the next bit. Before you even got into the actual jump, talking about the Paul Neurath interview, you called him the founder of Looking Glass. I object, sir, for I have talked extensively to Mr. Ned Lerner, co-founder of Looking Glass.
This is very, very true. Although, well, and this is where the question of who was already there, who was working on stuff, who was publishing games, and who had the money to finance it may be an issue. But I don't know the details there enough to really get into it.
Well, Looking Glass was the merger of two companies. There was already two existing companies. There was Lerner Research from Ned Lerner, and then Blue Sky Studios, I think.
You're right. I was thinking of Blue Sky, not Looking Glass. Oh,
yeah. But here, the other thing is that Ned told me that Blue Sky was founded pretty much on his entire investment, $1 million from his Chuck Yeager Flight Series games.
Gotcha. And Paul Neurath, in an interview that is yet to be released, he started Blue Sky mainly off with the money generated by Space Row. That's how.
I'm sure that there was a combination of things, but I mean,
yeah,
the Chuck Yeager games were way more popular.
Oh, of course, of course. So and Paul is very open about there wasn't a lot of money being generated from Space Row. It was enough, but it wasn't that much.
Yeah, so I think that there was that initial investment, and whether you want to call Ned a founder or not, they were, and as far as I know, still are good friends. So
definitely. Yeah.
So I don't think there's a big debate over the founder thing, but just you just said founder, and technically not.
My mistake was I actually meant Blue Sky, not Looking Glass.
Okay.
That's where my mistake was. And he probably still had co-founders on Blue Sky. I just didn't check in on it. So, mea culpa, truly a blunder.
All right. And now we must get into, after your slanderous depiction of the great GameCube controller, you have turned around and yet again done such a thing to the slightly not as good, but still perfectly serviceable Dreamcast controller. What do you have to say for yourself, Mr. Duke Lover Carl?
Okay, it's 1999. It has been 2 years since the Japanese release of the DualShock controller, and you release a controller with only one analog stick and you expect me to use the shoulder buttons for turning? Screw you.
Okay, well, first of all, most people didn't have the DualShock. It wasn't a standard thing until the PS2. And still, even on most games that would have used something, would have used that on the PS1, they were still using shoulder buttons for turning. This is not a standard thing until there was a couple isolated examples before it, but until Halo, there is no standard on this. And
Halo sets the standard for FPS. But when we're talking about third-person gaming, so camera behind the character, Spyro is doing this already. At the time of the Dreamcast launch, the Spyro demos, I believe, are already out.
Wow, demos! Wow, what proven success!
It's not proven success, but this was a pattern with Sega. Look at the Sega Genesis pack, which I believe we have discussed previously as being not so great. link to last month's episode, or the last last week's episode. If you look at it, how many buttons are on a standard Genesis pad? 4.
5.
There's the start button and 3 fire buttons.
Oh, I thought there was
select. How many? There's no select.
Okay.
How many buttons are on an NES pad?
4.
4. Sega is always fighting the last war with their controllers. Every one of their controllers, the only one where they were slightly on the level was the Saturn controller because it also has 8 buttons on it. But it only has 2 shoulder buttons. It's trying to fight the 2D fighting game war that it fought against the Super NES, while Sony already recognizes we need more shoulder buttons because we're going to be in 3D environments. And that's why they have 4 shoulder buttons. They're moving them away from having buttons in the front. They already saw Super NES. People got used to it without a problem, even if it was a less than optimal solution. But the real deal is we're going to be in a 3D environment. The Dreamcast, how many shoulder buttons does a Dreamcast controller have? 2. It doesn't even give you the additional option of being able to use the shoulder buttons for both firing and motion if you wanted it to.
Well, I mean,
it is a terrible regressive design that was in no way looking forward.
I don't think you can say that in the standard of the time. I think that you are like we talked about with the GameCube controller. You are seeing the DualShock PS2 and I guess the Duke as the inevitable climax of game controllers, but I don't think that's a fair view in that. I will say the one thing about the Dreamcast controller that is completely, utterly stupid is having the cord on the bottom. What sense does that make? It makes no sense.
It makes sense if you need to put that stupid little mini Game Boy.
You can still put it on the back. You don't have to do it from the bottom.
And this was, it's like this. As somebody who played it on launch night, $99.99, and having been playing games on my PC with keyboard and a mouse, the idea of moving and looking at the same time was a given. That you needed to be able to have both of those motions happening simultaneously while still being able to fire. And the controller did not give me that option. And that's why I knew that very first night I was holding it in my hand. I'm going, what the F? This is not retrospective. This was on the night of launch. I was like, this is a crap controller. I
also come from
on the launch stuff.
The PC background, but that has always been a huge struggle of console designers. Obviously, Nintendo has had this problem pretty extensively.
Even the GameCube controller.
I think that it works perfectly fine. You know, if you're playing something like Mario Sunshine, you can move the camera perfectly fine, and you have a centering option and all this stuff. But we'll just move on from that. You have stated your case, and you have been found guilty of bad taste. So
don't worry. Just wait until you listen to the rest of this episode.
Okay.
You'll have so much fun with it. Okay.
All right. And let's get on to one final thing for the year of 2001. You called Rockstar a label of Take-Two Interactive at this time, which it was not. Because Rockstar was a company, it existed, it's a development studio, but it was not a label that Take-Two used to publish their games, which is usually what you would mean by label.
Okay, good point. Yeah, it was more of a development studio title at this point. Good point. Yeah, it's just they renamed it DMA Design, so yeah.
Well,
and I think at this point there's only one Rockstar. They haven't.
Yeah, there's only one. It's kind of the relationship between DMA and Rockstar is kind of complicated. It's not just a renaming. I need to look a bit more into it, but it's not straightforward.
This is true. Okay, very, very good. Point well taken. So, anything else? Was that it?
That is all for January of 1981, 1992, and 2001.
You do know these are going to be in separate episodes, and people don't know that we recorded them all at the same time, right? Okay. Ethan, see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye. Oh, awesome, dude. Absolutely awesome. But no, dude, I still remember.
Well, I think I was right. The narrator voice really is a good thing.
I told you. I mean, come on. It gives us that gravitas that we need to be taken seriously in the tough as nails world of retro gaming history podcasts.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. We will crush our enemies, have them driven before us, and hear the lamentations of their women or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
For some reason, I see a silverback gorilla in front of me saying exactly what you've just said.
Why a silverback gorilla? Are we talking Gorilla Grodd here?
No, I'm just
Or are
thinking
you just thinking the wrong movie?
No, I'm not thinking a movie. I just think of a silverback gorilla, the alpha of the herd.
Okay, that works. But that's actually a quote from Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, okay.
You've never seen Conan the Barbarian?
I haven't seen that. I've just pictured you as a silverback gorilla right now for some reason. I have no idea. I mean, it's late. I'm sorry.
I appreciate the thought. And the comparison has been made in the past, but probably not for that reason. But yes, if you haven't seen Conan the Barbarian, oh, dude, that's on the watch list. That movie is amazing. Don't watch the sequel, the Conan the Destroyer. That was terrible. Or the reboot, that was even worse. But that original movie, dude, it's written by Oliver Stone. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger basically before superstardom. I mean, it's just it's amazing. There's so much to love about that film. Okay, but that's the end then of all of our pre-game coverage. Let's turn on the time machine and head back to February of 2001.
Nintendo's Gamecube system.
We're unveiling
What do you think about
2001? This is a computer game.
Welcome to February of 2001. Peter, what's our first story?
Nintendo reveals the GameCube controller.
Nintendo has finally shown the GameCube's controller publicly. A D-pad and Z button were added in the last minute after complaints from developers. The awkward-looking controller would end up splitting opinions in the gaming community between those that thought it was too small and awkward to be truly useful and those that were wrong. Yes, Ethan, this one's for you. So the interesting thing is that right around the same time, Microsoft is showing off the final Xbox build and controllers to potential developers in Europe. Have I mentioned how much I love the original Xbox controller, the Duke?
Oh, the old one.
The original. Original.
You like that chunky son of a bitch?
Oh, dude, only controller that ever truly felt at home in my hands. I have big hands, okay? That thing, it just filled the palms. It was perfect. It was, I used to play with that thing hours and hours and hours. Never got a cramped hand like I did with a PlayStation controller. It was just beautiful.
I mean, your hands basically have the size of a toilet lid, so yeah, it might work.
Wow, that's a weird comparison. They're not that big. Come on, okay. But so, did you have a particular opinion on the GameCube or Xbox controllers?
Actually, I was pretty much a fan of the Xbox controllers, but not of the Duke, but of the ones that came after the Duke. The Nintendo controllers, for me, they always had a toy vibe, you know?
Yeah. And it always felt weird.
It always felt weird. They were always too small. I think they were designed for a market where people just have small hands. And I mean, compared to you, I have pretty small hands, but compared to another, person that has normal sized hands, my hands are pretty regular sized, you know?
Yeah. I hate to use the word, but it felt toyetic. It just felt like it would fit in better with the toy, but oh well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even the colors being used for the GameCube controller, they all screamed, "I am a toy."
Yeah.
It has the vibe of a toy, and I think this is what they were aiming at, getting a toy vibe.
Well, I mean, yeah, they clearly knew who their target audience were. And, it wasn't their most successful console, not by a long shot, but it was also not a failure.
No.
I mean, it did not propel them back to the place they had been at with the NES, obviously, or probably even not even the Super NES. But it, as a hardware platform, obviously, it's going to give them the basic hardware is going to be reused for the Wii with very few modifications. So in the long run, they get quite a lot of mileage out of that piece of hardware.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But alas, I still stand by my opinion of the controller.
Yeah, actually, I have to say I tend to agree.
There you go. So, Ethan, it's 2-1. We win.
And this is all what that piece of information was about. Moving on, Tom,
Yes.
Tomb Raider gearing up for next gen.
Yes, this is the first of many, many related stories, or movie-related stories this month. With the movie starring Angelina Jolie getting ready for a summer release, Core Design is busy working on the next generation of titles that will apparently open up the world, have a multi-game spanning story, and not even be called Tomb Raider.
Okay, call me confused. What were they called?
Well, the idea here was that they were going to start pushing the idea of Lara Croft as a character in an open world. So they didn't want to be limited to the whole idea of raiding tombs anymore. They were trying to expand the concept. And Lara Croft at this point, remember, I don't know if you remember, but I mean, the character was everywhere. Magazine covers. There were even fashion magazines where they had rendered her with actual dresses on her and stuff. And I mean, it was just this multimedia phenomenon of this character. And the movie was coming out. Angelina Jolie was one of the biggest stars in the world at the time. It felt like, okay, we need to do more. The character has to be more. And of course, the open world concept is gaining steam right around this time. So it made sense to be pushing that. And the game that ultimately is going to come out is Tomb Raider. I want to call it
Angel of Darkness.
Angel of Darkness. I want to call it Heart of Darkness. That's almost more appropriate. Angel of Darkness, which is the game that is so bad, is so buggy, is so broken that ultimately Core Design loses the franchise. Eidos, the publisher, takes away from them, ends up giving it to Crystal Dynamics, and Core Design never recovers. I don't know if they release another game after that or if they just basically disappear. But and we will talk about it when it comes, but that's the game that they're working on, and you can tell, I mean, they've got big plans for the franchise, but obviously it's not going to happen. At least not that. The franchise will go on. It will get rebooted. It's going super strong today, but there's going to be a long, dark period for Tomb Raider.
Exactly. And I think I've played the second Tomb Raider. I was way too young for that, but it was so pixely that my parents didn't mind back then.
That's the one where it starts out in Venice, I believe. If I'm getting them straight in my head.
I think so. I can't remember. But then the series somehow lost me because, as I said, I'm not a shooters guy.
Yeah.
But it regained my trust with the reboot, and I actually liked the reboot. And my girlfriend wanted me to play the reboot so she can just watch it, which is nice.
So. Yeah, I haven't played the reboots at all. Just because, I don't know, I just haven't gotten around to them. I know my PC would probably start to sweat bullets trying to render it in even the most remote level of quality. So it just hasn't been on my radar. And I honestly didn't find the character or the characterization all that compelling from what I saw, that I'd be like, yeah, I really need to find out what the story is here. So I guess I did my time. I bought Tomb Raider when it first came out on the PC. I even bought it was the first game I played with a 3D accelerator card on my computer. And I had my time with Lara, and I'm done. I didn't need to go back. But alas. And I also bought a ticket to go see the first movie, so they got money out of me.
Oh, yeah. Getting money out of it, they did. All right, moving on. American McGee. McGee. Oh, jeez. You see, I'm well prepared. American McGee signs deal for Alice movie.
You would have known this if you had listened to my interview with American McGee, which is currently available for our Patreon subscribers. And next week will be released on the normal feed, where we actually talk about this story. Just saying,
So you mean I should sign up to Patreon?
I'm saying you have access to this. You kind of have an inside track, It's one of those things.
We're having a
good interview. It covers a bunch of stuff, including what's it like to be a game developer in China and what has happened there over the last 15 years and stuff like that. It's really a fascinating interview, and you're missing out just a little bit. Just saying.
Okay. I'll listen to it.
Yeah. So with the movies, with game-to-movie adaptations heating up, getting a movie based around American McGee's cinematic 3D action platformer was a pretty sure thing. The movie would never materialize, though, sadly. To find out more about it, as I said, check out my interview with American. And like I said, next week it's been on the Patreon exclusive list for the last 3 months, and it's going live next week. So if you want to be one of the cool kids, for $1, a month, be a patron and check it out early, and yada yada yada.
I think we should stop begging for money.
I'm not begging. I'm just, subtly hinting. Okay.
Give me your money, Poke. Give me your money. All right. But let's go back to more interesting topics than people not giving us their money. Crazy Taxi and Perfect Dark licensed for movies.
Because media synergy is the name of the game, baby. Production company Goodman Rosen Production, famous for the Police Academy TV show. And I know, I didn't know that existed either until I read it. Okay. Have picked up the rights to both games and are partnering with a variety of companies to make the movies a reality.
It's interesting. It's really a time of a whole lot of video games becoming movies, isn't it?
It is. There had been a brief spurt of this in the early 90s when we got Double Dragon, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Super Mario Brothers, and those movies, pretty much with the exception of Mortal Kombat, all underperformed. Yeah. And it just seemed to have died for a while. And here we're really seeing the effect of the PlayStation era and the massive success of the PlayStation, which has brought in, I mean, all those movies that I mentioned previously, with the exception of Super Mario Brothers, had originally started out as arcade fighting games.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were very, very light on story. Mortal Kombat was probably the one that had the most story elements to build off of, and also subsequently was the most successful of those movies at the box office, and even had a sequel, partially because the games did have a ongoing storyline that you could build something off of that wasn't super deep or philosophical or emotional, but at least it gave you a narrative structure to connect the action scenes together with.
Yeah.
And now with the PlayStation era of gaming, and I mean, Crazy Taxi obviously is not one of these, but you're starting to get games with more complex stories. I mean, we already mentioned Metal Gear Solid once this episode already, and you've got the big Final Fantasy games coming out. So the concept that a popular video game could be adapted into a movie, that there's enough meat on that bone narratively to keep an audience that's just sitting there without a controller in their hand entertained for 90 minutes is not that far-fetched anymore. And so it's really that popularity, that resurgence of the industry, that real just bombastic, we hit it big, we've got CD technology, we've got all these beautiful cutscenes, that I think the companies are clamoring to get their hands on these rights. Because, you know, it could be big. And everybody's expecting huge stuff from this Tomb Raider movie, and it will deliver. It's going to make a lot of money, and it's going to get a sequel. So, and this company is coming in, I mean, if you look at their IMDb listing, and there's going to be a link to it down in the show notes, like there's links to everything we talked about, that they're not really what you would call an amazing production company with a lot of successes. Like I said, the biggest thing I could say for them is Police Academy, the TV show, not the cartoon from the 80s, which was also a dud, but this was a live-action TV show that was fairly short-lived, and I'm just... the more I read about it, I'm like, I probably need to watch this at some point, but it's probably going to be terrible. And suffice it to say that there is no Crazy Taxi movie, and there is no Perfect Dark movie. Just saying.
So,
are you familiar with either of those?
Huh? Oh, no, I'm not.
Oh, okay. Just briefly, Crazy Taxi was an arcade game where you drove around in a taxi through San Francisco, picking people up and having to get them to their destination as quickly as possible. And if you did stunts or near misses of other cars and stuff, they would give you tips. They would give you more money. And if you got them there too slowly, then they'd complain and you would get less of a fare. So...
I mean, this sounds almost as exciting as a film about the battleships.
Yes, Battleship the movie similarly had no right to be based on something. If you're going to do a movie about the Navy fighting aliens, you didn't need to have the battleship license in there. But yeah. It's very, very similar. Now, Perfect Dark, on the other hand, that was a game where it was a futuristic spy thing. It was a spiritual successor to GoldenEye on the N64. And that one, you could have made a movie built around that storyline. That probably would have worked, but again, not with this development studio or development company.
Okay.
Oh well.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah, speaking of far more successful Hollywood talent.
Yeah, and basically doing it the other way around. John Woo to get into video game development.
Legendary Hong Kong film director John Woo is at the heart of a Hollywood dream deal. The William Morris Agency has brought Woo together with game developer Rainbow Studios and digital media producers Digital Dream Studios to create Digital Rim, a
Pretty
Honolulu.
digital.
What?
Yeah, it's pretty digital.
Very digital. Very, very digital. A Honolulu-based studio that will produce both interactive and linear digital content. What does it all mean? Absolutely nothing.
But it is digital, and I think this was a pretty important word for the time being.
Oh, digital was everything. I mean, remember, this is basically the .com bubble is bursting at this point. So these news reports are coming out sort of, they're probably being written before the people realize that the .com bubble is over.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of, there's, I couldn't find anything Digital Rim actually created. I found some short films, I think, that Digital Dream Studios created. Rainbow Studios, the game company, has no games of any real note on their resume. This is all just... I can actually imagine the boardroom meeting where they're like, okay, if we bring all these things together, slap the word digital on it, we can turn it into an IPO in 6 months and then make a fortune. And now John Woo is going to release a game a while later with none of these players, as far as I can tell, involved. That's going to have his name and stuff. It's going to be an okay game. Nothing to write home about, but it's going to be an okay game. But it's interesting to see how they're trying to leverage Hollywood talent for game design at this point.
Well, I think some Hollywood talents and actually some better story writing surely would have done those games good, and still would do some games good,
Oh, definitely. I mean, remember also that a game is inherently a different experience from a movie, because a game is built around repeating the same process over and over again.
Oh, sure.
And a movie inherently cannot do that. I can't have the same action sequence multiple times in a movie, because people are going to be like, I've already seen this. I need something else now.
Yeah.
And
sure.
And that's the fundamental difference where I think a lot of these attempts to transfer from a property from one medium to the other fails.
Yeah.
But
well, amongst others due to that. But still, even though a game is a thing where you repeat certain actions over and over again, you can give all those repetitions some nice background stories, and all of a sudden your fetch quest becomes interesting.
This is true. This is very true. And that narrative structure, you really need some good writers for that, but also that narrative structure has to be adapted in such a way that the emotional connection with the audience has to be measured so that it doesn't interfere with or doesn't feel awkward within the setting of that repetition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're still collecting mushrooms, but now you're enjoying
it. But now there's meaning to the mushrooms.
Yeah, meaningful mushrooms. Talking about meaningful stuff, Shenmue the movie hits Japan.
The Dreamcast killer app is getting the theatrical treatment with a 90-minute edit of the game's major plot points being released in select theaters as a movie.
Oh, shit.
Now, this footage would later be included as a bonus DVD with Shenmue 2 in its Western releases.
I desperately want to move on.
Well,
how the hell? So, let me get this straight. They were just taking out some content out of this game, cut it together, and broadcasted it in movie theaters.
Yep.
Those lazy bastards.
Well, I mean, they released it as a movie. Now, Shenmue for the time had a very impressive plot, a lot of voice acting, a lot of characterization. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a very cinematic. I mean, there was a lot of camera movement and stuff going on in the game. And this is also coming out at a time in Japan when, I mean, the decision has basically already been felled that the Dreamcast is dead. Yeah. Dreamcast is gone. We talked about that last month during our last jump, 20-year jump. Yeah. The Dreamcast is already dead. And that decision probably would have either been on the cusp of happening or close to happening when the decision to release this in theaters was made. Either it was a promotional tool to build up some kind of impetus for this, or it was just a way to get the property out there so more people who hadn't bought a Dreamcast saw it, so they might be excited about the sequels, because Shenmue was originally designed to be, I believe, a trilogy, maybe a quintilogy. I can't remember anymore. I'll have to look that up. But it was supposed to be only the first chapter of several chapters, and it ends on a cliffhanger. Basically, it doesn't end with a finalized story. So Shenmue 2 is just picking up the story, and it still doesn't end after Shenmue 2. But since the Dreamcast was a dead platform and Shenmue was a Dreamcast exclusive, and Sega already knows that they're going to be developing for other platforms, you're going to run into the problem that when you release the sequel on another platform, how many people who own that new platform have played the original game? And so having this as a promotional tool is a good way of, everybody knows what the plot is, they're up to date, so when they pop in Shenmue 2, it's as if they had played Shenmue 1 because they saw the movie. And in the Western releases, because Shenmue 2 comes out on the Xbox in North America, if you didn't own a Dreamcast and you bought Shenmue 2, you needed to watch this movie to understand what the hell the starting situation of the character is going into Shenmue 2. Yeah.
And I think it took another 5 years or 4 years until the launch of YouTube, so why not bring it in the movie theaters?
YouTube is still a long ways away. And I mean, if you go on YouTube today, this is quite a big area where people will take the cutscenes from games and some gameplay footage and make a movie out of it.
Yeah.
And I've done that myself with a lot of games where I know I'm never going to have time to get through them, but I really want to enjoy the story, and I'll just watch the edit, and I don't feel disappointed usually. So, I mean, why not?
Okay. You know what else is disappointing?
Tell me.
The D&D movie came out. So tell me, how was it?
Oh my God. The horror. Yes, I was there opening day. I guess I just wanted to mention this because, well, it was bad. I mean, really, really bad. And the best thing you can say about it is that it spawned straight-to-DVD sequels with a fraction of the budget that were better. That's kind of scary. And those straight-to-DVD sequels look like they're amateur films of LARPers, and they're still better movies. It's just terrible. There's no sugarcoating it. The DVD, the original D&D movie is just bad. So, if you haven't seen it, grab a bottle of scotch and drink the bottle of scotch and then throw away the DVD. You'll be much better off.
Once this entire COVID shit is over, we should do a bad movie night. I really miss those.
Dude, what we need to do is a bad movie night where we're actually recording our reactions the entire time. That would be fun.
I know, you want to monetize it, man.
Commentary track. Put it up on Patreon for our patrons. You and me commenting. I'll make a list of factoids about the movie that we can throw in occasionally when it's getting boring, and it's just our reactions to the bad movies.
Actually, I wanted to spend some quality time with you, but if you want to monetize on our quality time, I'm fine with that.
There you go. See? That's what this is all about.
Yeah. All right. It's not only us advertising. Also, Amazon is advertising their game section.
Nice transition, by the way. That was smooth. I like it. Amazon.com has taken out a full-page ad in Computer Gaming World promoting their lineup of PC games. Both pre-order and currently available titles are listed, and savings of up to 50% are promised.
So this was the time when Amazon moved away from just selling books and wanted to be a all-in-one online retail store.
Exactly. And I actually looked up on archive.org an old version of the website. And so around this time, they've expanded from books into DVDs and video games, and basically all of these media type of goods is what they are now selling, CDs and stuff like that. And it's interesting that they're advertising. They're somewhat well known, especially because of the .com boom. But they're not the place everybody goes to buy stuff. People are still going to physical stores. So the idea that just like the physical stores, they're running an ad in this print magazine, it kind of took me by surprise for a second, and then I had to remember back to what was the position of Amazon at this point. I had still never purchased anything from Amazon at this point. And seeing this ad where they're promising big savings on games and stuff, basically just undercutting the brick and mortar was their bread and butter. And it's an interesting strategy, and it's kind of a cool little thing to see, where this website was back then.
Yeah. For some reason, I have this memory of my aunt who was telling my family about Amazon and this fantastic website where I can buy books.
And I still remember, when they first started, it was a bookseller, and this idea of having it delivered to you and all this stuff. Obviously, delivery and it wasn't as fast as it is today. All of the logistical improvements over the last 20 years are quite astonishing. But the fact that it was just a bookseller online, like so many other startups were, single product category retailers, just seeing them expand and expand and expand, and using these ultimate dry goods, things that can just sit on a shelf for as long as you need to sit on the shelf as the foundation was pretty good. And of course, with the .com bubble bursting, Amazon at this point is still one of those companies that's not really turning a profit. So I can imagine that there were some a little bit of concern of, okay, if we can't keep selling the stock, what do we do? But obviously they were the ones who survived, and they are what they are today.
They barely survived to today, so
yeah. They could go under at any moment.
Yeah, just like Bethesda, were they about to go under?
Wow, you are good. You're on fire today with the transitions. So
well, at least something.
Oh, you were on fire in that game too. I think some of those enemies were using explosive bullets on you. There, you were probably on fire. But
oh yeah, I was on fire.
Computer Gaming World discusses the shaky ground the publisher of the Elder Scrolls games finds themselves on. It's been 4 years since Daggerfall and the 2 action-y spin-off games, Red Dog and Battlespire, as well as their Terminator first-person shooter action games, have been commercial disappointments. Their next title, an imported Russian development called Sea Dogs, may keep them afloat for a bit longer, but can their upcoming Morrowind really be enough to save them?
Yes.
Yeah, hell yes. This article in CGW really just caught my eye. It was one of those things where I was just like, it's hard to imagine a company like Bethesda being talked about like this today.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really look at the long development cycles that we were getting into at that point, and this really is a transition period when, development cycle of 2 years was considered long to what felt like all of a sudden, a 4 or 5 year cycle becomes normal. And the investment that you needed to be able to pull that off just kind of took people by surprise. But yeah, so this article just was one of those things where it seems so relevant at the time, especially since the first previews of Morrowind were showing up in magazines, but it was still going to be a while before the game shipped. And, I'd love to find out exactly what was going on. And, so we may actually have an interview with Chris Weaver coming down the pipeline. Maybe. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So the co-founder, I believe, of Bethesda, or was he just the founder? I cannot remember if he's the sole founder. Ethan will definitely correct me on that one. Yeah. So, but we may have an interview with him coming down the pipeline here pretty soon. And, so really, really interesting stuff. And that move to longer development cycles and how that was managed from a corporate standpoint is one of those things where we know in hindsight it all worked out just fine, but at the time, definitely shaky ground.
I mean, those development cycles got longer and longer and longer. I wonder what Computer Gaming World would have said about Rockstar.
Back then, it would have been inconceivable to have those long periods. But granted, at this point, Duke Nukem Forever has already been delayed for like 2 years. So it's one of those things where it's not without all precedent.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's getting weird. And the thing with Bethesda at this point is the games aren't... You're not generating money from the same old title. There's no microtransaction add-ons coming out. You ship the game. That's it.
Yeah.
And so the current model of, okay, we release a game, then we release the online component, and now you can buy, I don't know, some weird object in the game, and that's how we're going to keep financing further developments, would have not been something that we could have even seen coming yet, especially because the financial transactions, those microtransactions, the transaction costs would have made microtransactions prohibitive at that point.
Exactly. I mean, I want to think that people still had standards back then, but yeah, you're probably right.
Well, I mean, and you look at games like Ultima Online and EverQuest, which are hugely popular at this point, but they're all subscription model.
Yeah.
Because, okay, we're collecting $10 a month, say. I don't know exactly how much credit card payment transactions cost back then, but this is still before that's really been professionalized the way we have it today, that a video game company probably could have afforded to bring those transaction costs down enough to not be a significant portion of the monthly payment. All of that is still off in the future.
Well, something that's not in the future are the Baltimore sim developers, because they're being canned by EA.
Oh, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Electronic Arts. And we're back to our great tradition of the death of a company. Electronic Arts is following the industry trend away from hardcore military simulations that we have seen set by other companies in the last couple of years. While EA had several teams working on their Jane's licensed military simulators, the Baltimore team created their F-15 and F-18 games. The team, according to Moby Games BIOS, would get scattered throughout the industry, sadly.
Well, that's all, folks.
Yeah, for this developer it is. Now, the F-15 and F-18 Jane simulators were extremely highly thought of at the time. Amongst the simulator people, they were considered, top-notch programs. And the team had some ex-Microprose people involved, and there were a lot of industry veterans in there. And like I said, they really do get scattered to the wind. There's people who worked on these games popping up in all sorts of companies later on all sorts of products. And it's just sad that the simulation, the hardcore simulation in part of the market just is not generating enough money to support this kind of development anymore.
All things have to find an end, I guess, which leads us to the next topic of today.
Which is, that was it. It's the end. We ended with the death of a company again, well, sort of a development studio. And yeah, that's our jump back 20 years to February of 2001. Peter, do you have any closing comments? Thoughts?
Yes, actually, I wanna make a shout out to an old friend of mine who I haven't been in contact with for way too long.
Who?
Joel, my former roommate back from when I lived in the USA, and I hope he fought his way through our back and forth of more or less interesting news of 2001. And here's that. So yeah, just wanted to say I'm thinking of you, buddy, and I'm back in bad in keeping contact, but I hope I'll get better soon.
I'm sure you'll be able to pull it off. I'm sure you'll be able to pull it off.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. It's for some weird reason it's not easy for me to stay in touch with people that I haven't seen for a long time, but it always annoys me.
And to be honest with you, what I've started doing, I actually a whole bunch of my old friends that are scattered around the world, I just set up monthly Skype calls with them. Like I just did it. My best buddy from high school in Argentina, he now lives in Panama. We haven't been in the same room physically for probably 15 years, but we have our monthly scheduled chat, and we had it on Monday. And it's already on our calendars, the next one. So we just set it up this way. And I do this with all of my friends.
Yeah, this is a good idea. I should probably try that.
Yeah, just do it because it gives you that impetus. You know you're going to do it. It's on the calendar.
Yeah.
And it's great. It really is great because you need that contact, and it doesn't cost you anything. And believe me, once you're chatting with the person, it's like you've been seeing them every day. You get back into that flow, into those old conversations. I can only suggest that you give it a try. And this goes out to everybody else. I mean, if COVID has done nothing else, It has taught us the power of online communication to reach out, stay in touch with people, to have those human moments that social media and so forth can't give us.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just because you can't go outside doesn't mean that you can't meet up and have quality time with your friends.
Exactly.
So, just like the quality time you and I spend here every week.
Every goddamn week.
Exactly. Okay, let's wrap this up. What's the word of the show?
The word of the show is human touch.
Human touch. That's 2 words, but I'll let it go. Human touch it is. Have fun.
Bye.